house. So, but you can stop me if this is too boring, but because it's very long. Well, how the history begins of this estancia. In 1588, the King of Spain gives to Juan Nieto a big extension of lands, but a lot of lands that were called Merced or Mercedes of lands. They were so huge, let's say, because imagine that they reached Carlos Paz, for example, so many kilometers of lands. Why? Because Juan Nieto participated in the foundation of Córdoba capital city. Okay, 1573, foundation of Córdoba capital city with Alright. Beatriz asked me to take tests to you. So okay, so that's why the King of Spain, that at this time was feeling second, he gives to Juan Nieto a lot of lands as a present, as a gift. So he's here with his wife, they had a daughter, but very soon he dies. So she is alone with her daughter and she remarries with Alonso Nieto de Herrera, that he didn't have nothing to do with the previous Nieto, but you know, those who have Spanish last names, that's my case, we are a lot because of what you know. So Alonso Nieto, he marries Estefania, but Estefania also dies, and also the daughter, her daughter, dies. So he's alone. And he says, what am I going to do with all this? He had a lot of land. He didn't have children. He was alone. So he said, well, I'm going to donate everything to the, because he was a very religious man. So he decided to give all of this to the Jesus. The Jesus was a religious order that were coming to America together with others. The Jesus weren't the only one. So, but he decided to give all his lands to the Jesus, and the condition was that he could be a part of the order. So he started to participate in the order. One of his requests, for example, was to build the church. He was right. And the church had a virgin that was called the Virgin of Alta Gracia. Why? Because when he lived in Spain, he honored a virgin that was called the Virgin of Alta Gracia. That is why we have the name of the city, because of the virgin. Many years later, then we changed the virgin because of another owner of the house, but we kept the name of the place. I also lived there, and the Jesus started to build all this house. All the Jesus have only one purpose, one objective. They wanted to support economically to the Colegio Máximo, that was in Córdoba capital city, future university. Why to them? Because they were men, remember, only men at those times, that could study to be future priests and to be future men, to be part of the order. But they received money from the king, but it wasn't enough. So they decided to start building this productive business. For you to have in mind, there are Jesus had two missions, let's say. One was educative, that was the one we know, for example, in Misiones, in those parts of the country. Another one was productive. The estancias were mainly productive. Well, they started building this, as we have the house. Maybe you may say, why the house was so big? Because when they received the students some periods of the year, they came to Alta Gracia, so they needed a lot of rooms. So this is the house, the church, the main patio, this is the backyard, this is the blacksmith that they were going to visit it. The Tajamar is the first artificial lake in the province of Córdoba. The first artificial lake. The water that the Tajamar received came from some streams, you know streams?
Yes.
Okay, that they came from, you can see that Alta Gracia is like hidden.
Yes.
Well, there are 2-3 streams in like the upper part of the city, so they make channels to the water, so the water could come to the Tajamar.
Yes.
The Tajamar has an 80 meters long wall, and it has between 60 and 90 centimeters wide, and the purpose of the Tajamar was to make 3 mills function. I'm going to explain that next door. Then, this is the workshop. The workshop is where mainly women worked because you can imagine that all the estancias were self-sufficient. So they need to make everything. So in the workshop, mainly women worked, and they make, soap, clothes, they worked the leather, wood. Well, they worked everything, so they could make everything they needed for the everyday life. Then we have the rancheria. That was the slaves' dwelling. That was the place where the slaves lived. The Jesuits tried to form families. For them, it was very important that the slaves had a family, and they lived there.
But excuse me, but the family was between them.
Between slaves. Yes, between slaves. Yes.
But don't the Jesuits support slaves?
Yes, they supported slavery because it was a tendency of the period. Everybody had slaves at those times.
But the slaves were of the African origin?
Yes, it was. At those times, most Africans came from, of course, Africa, but they came from there in ships. They came by ships, and they went to Buenos Aires, to the port of Buenos Aires, and then they were distributed to different parts of, at those times, the parts of the continent, because they also went to Uruguay, to Brazil, different places. Of course, they were at the ports. In these parts, closer to us was the one in Buenos Aires. They brought slaves to the Estancia, to this one and to the others, because there are 5 estancias. This is not the only one. And also the estancias were collaboratively. What the estancia needed, they asked to the other estancias. Yes, and the teacher too. Look, this is my bottle that I take to my school. So my students don't take my bottle.
This is the first?
No, this is like the fourth estancia. There was Jesús Maria, I think was the 1616. It was the first one, and this one, it was in 1643. So it's like the fourth one. Okay, I didn't remember Jesús Maria Garza, but this is the fourth one in 1643. Well, they also had a lot of animals. The estancia started to grow, like it was very powerful. They had a lot of production because they produced animals, they produced a lot of, they were the plants. And in 1767, in Europe, there was a period, a longer period, but it was a point where there was kings were absolutists. They wanted all the power, and they started to have like differences with the religious, with the church, let's say. So the king said, at those time was Charles III, and he said, the Jesuits are becoming very powerful. I don't like this. They were really, the Jesuits were very educated people. They they had knowledge in education, law, administration, architecture. They were like, well, of course, that's why the king didn't like it. And he said, I don't want Jesus in any part of America, because the process was in the whole continent, not also here in this part of the south. So, from one day to another, without previous notification, all the Jesus were taken away. They came, the soldiers of the king said, they came one day, they were working, any normal day, and they say, you, because there were 3 priests here, we go. They went to Buenos Aires, and then they went to Europe again. I forgot to say that there were only 3 priests and approximately 300 slaves in this estancia. But there were other people who also worked in this estancia. Who do you think they were? Yes, of course, the comechingones. The comechingones were the ones who also worked, but they weren't slaves. They came here, they were paid, and they went back to their houses. That is one of the reasons that we don't know exactly the number of first inhabitants that there were at those times, because there is not a register. In that room, that then I'm going to give you a few minutes so you can go, there is a book where the Jesus register everything that happened in the estancia. Everything that they bought, everything that they sold, everything that they produced. So that's why today we have so much information because of those books. So imagine how they were very advanced for the period, but they made a register of everything. But as the comechingones weren't like a production, they weren't a slave, so they didn't make notes of how many there were at those times. Well, what happened with the estancia? When the Jesus left, the estancia was in charge for 6 years of a group of people who were represented the king, but they couldn't manage the estancia the same way that the Jesus made. So what happened? The estancia started the worst period of decay. Okay? Animals started to die, plants production also, so it was like a big problem here. They decided to start selling the estancia to different people, but nobody could recover the power of the estancia. Till 1810. That is a very important year in our history. 1810, there was a man who was fighting in Buenos Aires against the English, and who was he? Liniers. Liniers was like in his best moments, but also he was kind of old and tired, because he's been like fighting for many years, and he said, I'm going to retire. I know there is a estancia in Córdoba, beautiful estancia, a lot of green, with good weather. I retire and I go to Alta, to Córdoba. So he came with his children. He had like many children, like 10 children. Any of you have 10 children? Well, maybe. Yes, maybe. Well, he had like 10 or 11 children. He had many children. He was alone with all his children, and he came to the house. So the house was perfect. A big house. So, but what happened? He bought the house in the summer. And in May of 1810, the people here started like kind of revolution. So they wanted to be free from Spain. And although he was French, he fought for the Spanish crown. So he said, I'm going to participate in this revolution. Because, well, he couldn't avoid it. It was part of him. So he started like to group people. He participated in these like battles, but he was shot and he died. Okay, so the house was in hands of his children for 10 years till 1820. he also was like kind of, the person, like, not lawyers, but the person, I don't remember the word in English, the person who made the written documents. And he said, well, before I die, I want to give all these lands to the people of this place. At those times, there were many people living here. It was a mixture, like May Revolution. After that, there were people from Spain, there were people from like criollos, there were like a lot of people living here. So he decided to give to the people living around here a document saying this piece of land is yours. So that's why for us, for Alta Gracia, Manuel Solares is like a very important person because he's not the founder, but in a way he is, because he gave all his lands to the people living here, and that the square in front of us is called Manuel Solares. Also, he inaugurated the first school for girls. For example, there is a school in front of the square that is called Manuel Solares, and was the first school for girls, and we're talking 1820, for example. No, it's like half block in front of the square. When Manuel Solares, when he dies, all this house, two families lives here that were like kind of heirs. They were nephews, nieces of him, and in this house, a girl was born. This girl, when she was born, he lived the history of the house, and also she saw that many people wanted to visit the house because of Liniers mainly. Some because of the Jesus, but mainly because of Liniers. So she said this house could be a museum. She was the one that thought. Her name was Noemi Lozada de Soja, that was then the first director of the museum, of this museum. So she's the one who starts all the documents and everything that is necessary to make the museum a museum. First, a historical museum, and many years later, also because of all the things that she made in the year 2000, this estancia, together with the other estancias and also with the ones in Córdoba capital city and the Jesuit block that I'm sure you all know, were declared mankind cultural heritage. And I have here, because I said a lot of dates, for you to try to remember all the important dates. Okay? So we have, as I mentioned, Juan Nieto, then 1643, then Junta de Temporalidad is the name of the group of people who were in charge representing the crown, Liniers, Solares, then in 1941 is when we see the house as a museum. Okay? Then there was a period of 10 years approximately when the house was closed, where there was a period of research and documentation, so they could gather a lot of information, the information that I'm sharing today and we have today. And then in the year 1977, the museum is reopened, and the year 2000 is the one that I said that it is declared a mankind world heritage.
Excuse me, when you say the house,
yes,
you're talking about the buildings only or the whole estancia?
All the estancia.
And the city or the villa?
The village?
The village, when it was...
After when the Spanish started to come, because there was a big period that the Spanish started to come to these lands, because, well, they wanted to live here. America was, when the Spanish discovered America, when they came here, they discovered also the richness of our lands. So that's why they came to live, but also, well, to take minerals. For example, something I'm going to mention in the other room